Hello, and thank you, Igor. There is a lot of stuff going on the product team and the engineering team at NGINX. What Igor shared with you is just one of the many projects that are currently underway, and I want to share a little bit more in this session. But before I do that, can I also extend my greetings? Welcome to the conference. It is really encouraging to see the size of the crowd, the faces out here. This morning, as I mingled at reception, there are a few faces I recognize, but a lot of new faces. Things have really changed at NGINX over the last couple of years. 2 years ago, this was our first conference. Little small airport hotel in San Francisco. Who was here at the conference then? We got a few employees, we got just a handful. Well, I hope we didn't put people off at that conference. I think rather what we're seeing is the huge trajectory of growth amongst the NGINX community over the last couple of years. And here, we have end users, we have module developers, we have partners, all critical members of the ecosystem that make NGINX the technology and the product that it is now. NGINX might be a small part of your entire application stack and infrastructure, but it's absolutely critical to what matters so much to you, flawless delivery of those services. You met Igor. NGINX goes back much further than the 2 years that we've been running conferences and user events like this. Right from the beginning, we were facing the challenge of solving modern application problems. Back in 2004, the problem that Igor was facing, managing the infrastructure for a Russian portal site, was what was commonly known as the C10K problem. How can you scale a platform to handle a large volume of requests? And this was impacting the service. Poor response time, unreliable applications. And that challenge was the genesis of the NGINX project. First open source release, October 2004, carefully timed to coincide with the 47th anniversary of Sputnik. And NGINX grew slowly for a number of years, but then the trajectory went stratospheric. 3 years ago, based on W3 Tech's figures, the 1,000 busiest sites in the world, more of those sites used NGINX than any other web server or web delivery platform. 2 years ago, the 10,000 busiest sites in the world. These are the expert system administrators, the people for whom performance really matters. More of those 10,000 sites used NGINX than anything else. Last year, 100,000 of the busiest sites in the world, more used NGINX than anything else. The number of domains running NGINX, the chart shows you from Netcraft figures, has climbed. Over 180 million domains worldwide depend on this technology. Igor never set out to dominate the world. He had a problem, he needed to solve it. That was the beginning of NGINX. And we're all humbled by the growth in the community and by the adoption of our technology. We never set out to take market share from other players. We never set out to be the world leader, but with a relentless focus on what matters, building the fastest, the most efficient, the most rock-solid, open-source web and application delivery tech. That's what's driven us to the place where we are now, enabling you to publish websites and to build applications that operate flawlessly. There's been a steady pace of innovation over the last 5 years at NGINX, and it's only growing as we extend the capacity of our engineering team and as we embrace more and more innovation from the community. Over the last few years, you'll have seen focus on security, SSL, speedy and then H2, work on caching, work on authentication, the release of NGINX Plus, which is our commercial variant with additional capabilities as an application front end, an application delivery controller. And all of this sits underneath the huge contributions from our module developers and community contributors. Fantastic third-party modules like Mod Lua that I know many of you depend upon. In terms of investment in NGINX, to some eyes it may not seem big. The NGINX open source code, 5 years ago, 100,000 lines of code. Now, 180,000 lines of code. It's not huge. It's probably smaller than many of the applications that you build. But behind that is a set of core values that I know our users and we share. Every year, we check that. We run a survey with our community to find out how are we doing as a company, how is the NGINX project doing. And the core values that our users share are the core values that are reflected in our own products. Performance, lightweight, simple configuration, easy and rapid to deploy. Flexibility to meet a number of different needs, web, caching, reverse proxying, load balancing. Stability, high quality. As members of the NGINX community, you'll share these values. This is what you buy into. This is what we're building. And the relatively small number of lines of code, 180,000 lines of code, if you are a contributor to NGINX, if you've tracked the activity on the mailing list, you will have seen the phenomenal degree of scrutiny that goes into every single line of code in NGINX. And what you see publicly is only the tip of the iceberg to the discussions we have internally to make sure that we are building the best possible technology. A 1 meg binary, it's a 10th the size of Apache, it's a 30th the size of Node.js. It's pretty much the same size in lines of code and memory footprint as something as quick and lightweight as the Bash shell. And this little lightweight bit of technology is driving 180 million websites worldwide. In fact, at a little bit over a meg in size, it's considerably smaller than the average web page size it's asked to serve itself. So what's new? What's happened in the last 9 months since our last conference, since the last status update that we gave with you? The features we've been developing in the last 9 months continue to reflect these core values. Dynamic modules, all about ensuring the core of the product stays lightweight and simple. It provides you and it provides partners with an easier, reliable way to build new features and to screw them into the core. UDP load balancing. UDP load balancing speaks to the flexibility of the product, the simplicity of the product, the ability to unify services into one. This came about because we found that more and more of our users were using NGINX as a front end, not just for HTTP traffic, but for other services as well. They came to us with opportunities, a desire to move out some of their legacy infrastructure and use NGINX more heavily to front not just the public-facing part of their applications, but internal parts as well, protocols beyond HTTP. So features like UDP load balancing were generated by that desire. In our commercial product, NGINX Plus, it's around flexibility. We added OAuth authentication. Essentially, what OAuth authentication allows NGINX to do is it teaches NGINX who is the individual user behind every single request. You can do great stuff with NGINX, rate limiting by IP, shaping traffic based on user agent. With this capability, you can now do that per individual user. And service discovery. When you drop NGINX into a large, distributed, a microservices-like application running in a containered environment, then suddenly the challenge of locating services and connecting those services together becomes paramount. So the service discovery capabilities speak to that. And finally, we recently announced the first release of mod security for NGINX. The first official release built in partnership with Trustwave. It's been a project over a year or two long. Trustwave have been engaged in refactoring the mod security product that was originally written as an Apache module and had shims for other web servers like NGINX, refactoring that into a dedicated security library with dedicated connectors for each platform. NGINX being the first on the list. We've been working with mod security, supporting their open source efforts through engineering contributions. And now, we're at the point where you can take the leading open source web application firewall, combine that with what is the leading open source high performance web server, and have a fantastic solution bringing both of those together. What's next? What do we see in the future for NGINX? What do I see in the future for our industry? For the first indicators, let's go back to our user survey, the survey we conduct every year. We asked our users, what keeps you awake at night? These are the top problems that, if we do our job well, we can help to address. And they fell into a range of buckets. People were concerned about the reliability of the infrastructure they're running on, the back-end applications that we're running, and the impact that would have on the public-facing part of their app. Scalability. When traffic comes, can they scale to deal with demand? Underperformance, if individual parts of the application underperform, or security, there are data leaks. But what brought all of those together? The biggest concern was not knowing about these problems until it was too late. The fear that what should have been the best day in the history of their business turning into their personal worst day. These operational challenges are also increased by some of the demands that you and developers are facing, that businesses put on them about the architectural complexity of modern applications. The desire to bring new features to market faster, the desire to iterate, develop more quickly. In the drive for faster time to market, there's a massive shift in architectural approaches from a single monolith, a tried, tested, trusted approach, but one that is very heavyweight and slow to iterate, to a more decoupled, microservice-like application architecture, where individual components can be managed individually. But as soon as you do that, you bring a number of extra elements into the picture, and they can cause challenges. Now your application depends critically on the performance and the reliability and the availability of underlying services, such as the network, making the performance and reliability of your app considerably harder to confidently deliver. And with this architectural complexity comes new platform complexity. There is an oncoming tsunami of choice that you face, a range of imperfect and immature solutions shouting for your attention, trying to take you in a particular direction to build the core platform for your applications. A choice in platform infrastructure: Amazon, Google, DigitalOcean, Azure, VMware, OpenStack, countless others. If you're going to adopt containers, and I know that many of you are, then choices around the container platform, the infrastructure. Google's container engine, Amazon ECS, Azure, Mesosphere, Docker technology. On top of that, you then need to think about the frameworks, the schedulers, the orchestration tools that are going to manage the services that you deploy as containers. Kubernetes, CloudFormation Stack from Amazon, Marathon from the Mesos team, Docker, Compose, and Swarm, and then service registry, tracking what you've deployed, where is it, Council, etc., Zookeeper. There's potential for immense jeopardy. Every technology choice you make risks locking you in to a particular deployment environment, or a particular technology stack, or a particular route. And we know that what users are looking for are A, an acceptance that that is the risk that you take on, but B, a way forward so that they can find a way of dealing with that risk. Let's take one example, a simple example, networking. In all of these environments, the platform you choose, Amazon, Google, Azure, and others, will often direct you in a particular route for the networking technology you're going to deploy on top of that platform. It's great that lots of that networking technology is, in fact, built on top of open source components. Amazon's recently released Amazon Load Balancer, ALB, is, as many of you will have identified, built on top of NGINX open source, with a number of modifications the Amazon team have made. That doesn't make it a perfect solution, unfortunately. When you look at a service from a provider like that, you have to appreciate that there are often limitations. The limitation is often based on the keyhole that the API gives you into that technology. Amazon's API keyhole opens up certain bits of functionality, but limits others. You might look at established load balancer providers as an alternative. Many of these aren't suited for the new world I've just described of turbulent, rapidly changing applications. We believe that traditional approaches don't always fit. As Gus mentioned, we're delighted to have been included for evaluation in Gartner's most recent ADC, App Delivery Controller, Magic Quadrant. The first and only open source technology to be included amongst that group of applications. And Gartner have done a very detailed study evaluating the suitability of traditional, existing, and some of the new emerging load balancer and ADC solutions for different use cases. We look at this data, and we interpret that it supports our belief that NGINX is the ideal solution for what the industry is calling Mode 2 applications. Fast-changing, modern, developer-led applications. So, with that in mind, what is the role for NGINX in the new world that I've described? Where reliability, scalability, performance, security are all competing for your attention, and you have a plethora of imperfect choices in front of you. NGINX will always remain where it brings the most benefit, right next to the application and embedded, as Igor described, within the application. HTTP is the lingua franca, the common language of modern applications. The volume of HTTP is increasing, and as you know, there is no better way to handle HTTP at scale than with NGINX. If flawless application delivery is what matters to you, then you start with NGINX. There are a number of future initiatives that we're working on. Igor has shared some. I'd like to add a little bit of color to those in the last few minutes. The first is EngineScript. We announced EngineScript last year. Igor and his team have been working on this technology for the ensuing 12 months, and we're making a great degree of progress. The challenge that EngineScript seeks to address is that, as we know from our user surveys, users love the configuration language, the simplicity, the logical layout, the declarative form of the config language, but that can sometimes be an Achilles heel. When the configuration language is so elegant, if you need to do something a little bit non-standard, the configuration language may not be able to be bent sufficiently to meet your requirements. EngineScript is the solution that we propose for this. We've built a virtual machine for running bytecode, a virtual machine that is very tightly integrated with the way that NGINX operates event-driven memory management. We've built a parser and a compiler for a large subset of the JavaScript language that then builds bytecode to run on that virtual machine. We've hooked it into the NGINX core through a set of internal APIs, and the net result is that you'll be able to use EngineScript to extend NGINX by creating new directives in JavaScript. Where the NGINX configuration would normally evaluate a variable as part of processing a request, you'll be able to evaluate a JavaScript function at that point. We're not seeking to be an application engine. We're not trying to replace Node.js. We're not trying to build something that is as rich and powerful as the Lua module. What we're trying to do reflects our core values, create something that is quick, familiar, simple, and solve the problem that you have to hand. Next, I'd like to introduce Amplify. And I'd like to introduce you to my colleague, Nick, who's going to join me on stage and give you a quick demo. Amplify addresses the challenge that comes as you use NGINX more and more within your application infrastructure. More NGINX instances gives you challenges around monitoring, coordinating the configuration, verifying you're running with the best practice configuration. But it also creates opportunities. With NGINX everywhere, NGINX sees your application traffic. You're not just monitoring and inspecting how NGINX operates, NGINX knows how your application operates as well. So, Amplify is our new management and monitoring platform. Lets you track your NGINX estate from a single pane of glass, audit what's going on. So please welcome Nick on stage, and he'll give you a little bit more of the technical details. Thank you, Nick.
Thank you, Owen. NGINX Amplify has three major parts: an agent, the metrics receiver, and the web interface. An agent is a software that is installed together with your NGINX instance, whether it's a bare metal installation or it is a container or a virtual machine. The core interfaces of Amplify with the metrics collectors and with all the web interfaces are located in the Amazon cloud. So let's take a look at the web interface. First thing we need to do is log into the website. And thankfully, my browser remembered the credentials. First thing that we see in the Amplify interface is the list of NGINX and NGINX Plus instances and the graph feed view. Once we click on any of the graphs, we can pin them to the graph feed on the right. And if we look closely, we will see that the graphs are divided in two parts. One part is dedicated to the system metrics that are collected through the various set of system tools by the agent. And if we scroll down, we will see the NGINX related metrics, like NGINX CPU usage or some other metrics like HTTP versions. So when we combine everything together in a graph feed, we can easily correlate against all the metrics, and that helps us a lot with troubleshooting complicated and distributed issues across the modern apps. We can easily change the time scale to something like 4 hours or even a few days up to a week. And that shows all the information in parallel. So let me show you a couple of unique features of NGINX Amplify that make it very useful for any NGINX or NGINX Plus installation. First, let's click on the custom dashboards. In the custom dashboards, we can see a number of single values that can be shown based on the system graphs and NGINX related metrics, or we can see the customized graphs. All that can be easily changed, and all the dashboards are fully customizable. Let me show you first the metrics that combine the values across multiple instances. And this is the way how we can look at multiple values at the same time, either summarizing them or taking the averages. And another thing that I want to show you is the filters. Once we apply a filter to the graph, we'll be able to see the very specific value down to a variable in the log files. And all that is configured automatically by the agent. You don't need to define those variables anywhere in the interface. So the filters provide you the most detailed view on your application delivery infrastructure. Next, let me switch to the Reports tab of NGINX Amplify. NGINX team knows the best how to configure NGINX installation. And we worked together with the development teams and professional services teams to build the most comprehensive configuration analysis and configuration overview tools for you. Let me show you the feature of the security alerts. If your NGINX installation has a current known security issue, NGINX Amplify will show you why you need to upgrade and which versions are not affected by it. If we scroll down to the configuration analysis, we will see a very interesting feature right here. NGINX agent scans all your configuration files, and once it scans the configuration files, it also shows you what potential inconsistencies or what potential issues you might have with that configuration. And it shows you very clean warnings with links to the documentation references, and even shows you what you need to add to your configuration files and where you need to add those values. And that provides you automated static analysis of the configuration, which is extremely useful for most NGINX installations. So how can you learn more about NGINX Amplify? You can obviously log into amplify.nginx.com and register yourself. Or you can go to Expo Hall at NGINX booth and see this demo and look at that and go through it in person. You can join the Amplify session this afternoon. Look for the words Amplify and NGINX in the schedule. And also, we will be holding the first ever NGINX Amplify meetup together right here at 7 p.m.
Great. Thank you, Nick.
Thank you, Owen.
Thank you. So, if you're interested in managing and monitoring your NGINX estate, make sure you don't miss those events. One last initiative I'd like to share with you before we close for the morning is our work on microservices architecture. We've been trying to understand and deduce the best practices for building scalable, reliable, high-performance distributed applications with a goal of creating a reference architecture that we can share with the community, an architecture that embodies the best practices that we believe in, and an architecture that also feeds into the future product roadmap for NGINX. The challenges that users who adopt this sort of architecture face is that when you deploy applications in a containered environment, the topology is hugely unpredictable. It's very challenging to reliably connect and control and scale these applications. And as part of our reference architecture, we're looking at best practice techniques for service discovery, for security, SSL through the application, load balancing and health checks, providing capabilities like circuit breakers for each of the application instances that you're running, with a goal of there being no delay, no single point of failure, having an architecture that perfectly mirrors the distributed architecture of your application. Embedding NGINX at the core of the fabric model, NGINX is a forward and reverse proxy within each individual application instance. Services can discover other services in the application, perform health checks, run persistent SSL connections. That alone, we have measured, reduces the SSL overhead in our test application by 99.7%. And the net effect is that your distributed application can then operate at massive scale. If you're interested in finding out more about our progress in this area, please do catch Chris Stetson's talk Thursday afternoon, where he will present the work that we've done so far on this reference architecture. So, as we close for this morning, I want to thank you again for coming and supporting us here. I hope you can see that not only has NGINX had an exciting past, but there's an exciting future ahead of us as well. We don't exist just in a vacuum. Our partners and our user community are also building and innovating solutions on top of NGINX. So in the short break we have coming up now, please catch the Expo Hall, meet some of our partners, meet other NGINX users, come and find us at the NGINX booth or anyone with an NGINX t-shirt, ask us questions, find out what's happening, but most of all, make the most of and enjoy the conference this week. Thank you again.